Hi everyone, this is Aaron for Zollotech, and I'm going to be reviewing the Motorola Xoom tablet. Now the reason I haven't reviewed it is because I've been waiting for the iPad 2 to come out so that I can get a real comparison between, is this really the next gen tablet or is it the current gen with the iPad 2, and wanted to share some of my thoughts on that. So let's first though talk about design. The Motorola Xoom is a nice tablet. It looks good, the screen looks nice, and has a really quality feel to it when you hold it in your hands. As you've seen here, you've got this nice glass with a fairly thin bezel, thinner than the iPad. You have your camera up front, and on the top you have your headphone jack, your micro SD/4G SIM card slot. On the back you have a nice metal back. I'm assuming it's aluminum. It does have some heft to it, but you have some stereo speakers, a camera with flash, and it's a pretty nice 5-megapixel camera that does HD video. It's pretty nice design overall. The bottom has some ports here where we have HDMI, we have our micro USB, and our charge port. And you see some 2 screws here and some microphones, and it's just a really nice design. Has a good heft in your hands, does not feel like it's going to break, is solid, and is overall pretty nice. The specs of the Xoom tablet are pretty impressive. We have a dual-core NVIDIA Tegra 2 clocked at 1 gigahertz per core. We also have 1 gigabyte of RAM, and we have 32 gigabytes of internal storage. We also have a 2-megapixel front-facing camera, a 5-megapixel rear camera that records in 720p video, stereo sound, and a nice 1280 by 800 pixel capacitive touchscreen. So the specs of the tablet are very impressive, and as many of you know, it runs Android 3.0 Honeycomb. Honeycomb is the next generation of Android, or the current generation now that we have the tablet. As I power this on, you'll see it start up, and Honeycomb was designed for tablets. Currently, this is the device that has or showcases Honeycomb. It's really quite a nice design, as you'll see once it boots up here, and runs really well on the Xoom. It's definitely different than your typical Android, but offers all the features and then some of the previous versions of Android, such as the current on many devices, Froyo and Gingerbread on the Nexus S. As you can see, it's starting up. There's a bunch of honeycombs. Now, I haven't used Honeycomb on any other tablet, so I'm assuming this is Google's startup. However, it could be something Motorola did. The default wallpaper on here is not the Android's, but can be changed easily by tapping and holding, and you'll see the interface zooms out and gives you all of these options with things that are running. These are all of your widgets that you can add to the home screen. We have wallpapers, which we'll go to here, and we'll go to these wallpapers. Will not run a live wallpaper, just as it doesn't really slow it down, but does hamper system performance a little bit. You won't notice it as far as what it's doing, but as far as the video goes, we'll just have this on for our wallpaper. As you can see, the screen's very reflective as well, which you would expect from any glass tablet. Anyway, let's talk more about Honeycomb. Honeycomb here is laid out a little bit differently, and I did do another overview, so I'm not going to cover every little aspect, but as you can see here, it says installing. This is where our notifier is on Honeycomb. If I tap on this, it will tell us our network that we're connected to, our battery life, Google Maps successfully installed, and that is an update. And we have our settings button here underneath the time. We have airplane, Wi-Fi, and we can tap settings down here. Within settings, you'll find your normal settings laid out nicely on the side here, with settings down the front, which include things such as tethering and portable hotspot, along with your Bluetooth and Wi-Fi settings and those things. And it will tether via Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, USB. It's really a nice setup. Let's go back home here. On the left, we have our home back button and our multitask management by tapping here. This is what's currently running. If I open the browser and tap here, you will see that we can go back to settings. If I tap here, you can see that we'll go back to browser. If I open more applications, they start to rack up along the left-hand side here, and it works really nicely for a tablet OS. In the upper right, we have our apps, and we have our add button, which is the same as tapping and holding on the screen. We'll hit home to go back, tap on our apps, the apps zoom in, and here we go. Included with the Xoom tablet are some interesting apps on Honeycomb, such as the Movie Studio and Music, which is really nice. You should check that out in a different review if you wanted to see that. We'll go back to home. And in our upper left, we have our search options such as Google, and we can talk to it like any other Android device and search via voice, which is nice. We have multiple home screens with active widgets such as YouTube. We can scroll through, and overall Honeycomb is a great operating system and works very well on a tablet. It doesn't mean it's perfect, but it is a first iteration, and for a first iteration of tablet OS, it's pretty good. The speed of the Xoom tablet is very nice. With its NVIDIA Tegra 2 processor, as mentioned before, it really keeps up with what you're doing quickly. If I want to open a browser, go back home, I can do that. Open up music, go home, open up books, again go home, or access any of those via the multitasking, I can do that very nicely. It's very quick, very efficient, and works really well on a tablet, and is compared as far as speed goes to just about any tablet out there, if not better. The screen of the Xoom tablet is really nice. It's responsive. While there are some issues within the browser that make it hampered as far as touch goes, the screen overall is responsive. The difficulty lies in tapping on small things with your finger when you're trying to get into them. Sometimes it does not respond as well as you might think on certain websites I found using after a while. The screen though overall is very high quality, higher resolution than an iPad at 1280 by 800 like I mentioned before, and provides a really nice display. However, the screen is extremely reflective, more so than others, and I think that's mainly due to its black background or darker themes in the background. So you may want to lighten those. As you saw at the beginning of the video with the Androids, it makes it a little bit easier viewing on the eyes with the lack of reflection. The cameras on the Xoom tablet are quite nice. The 5 megapixel camera does a nice job of taking pictures and making it a good overall experience. While you're taking a picture, you have a large screen here. Here's my hand. We'll go ahead and take a picture. Just snap that picture. We do not have tap to focus, so if I put my hand here and you can see it's out of focus, we don't have a tap to focus option, but overall it is an autofocus camera and does a pretty good job of that. We can switch to the video camera by tapping here and going to our 720p video camera, and we can record similarly. We also have our options along the side as far as all the different options, which is really nice. We can easily switch between all of the different options, which are pretty comprehensive for such a simple device that is not meant to be a camera that you would carry with you like a point and shoot. It's got some really nice options. Let's go ahead and flip to the front camera. As you can see, we're recording off the front 2 megapixel camera, and you can see the camera I'm recording with in the top of my head, and it does a nice job as well and has quite a few different options also. The audio provided by the Xoom is pretty good as well. It has dual stereo speakers on the back that provide really decent sound when you're watching video, and provide an advantage over things such as the iPad that only has mono sound. The headphone jack on the top also does a nice job in providing good stereo sound and quality. The battery life of the Xoom is pretty decent as well. It's about on par or maybe a little bit less than an iPad, which means up to 10 hours of video playback. It depends on the format that you have it in, but you could get potentially up to 10 hours of video playback on the Xoom. So that means while you're taking a plane trip, you don't have to plug it in unless you're on a very long plane trip. You'll be able to watch a few different videos and be pretty content doing that, and maybe listening to some music along the way. And just browsing the web, I seem to get very good battery life that would easily last a day or day and a half. With my typical use of using it a few hours, putting it away, and using it again. It seems to be more than enough for a tablet of its size and compared to the competition. With all the good things that the Xoom offers, there are some problems. One of those is the high screen reflectivity that I talked about earlier. The other thing that I do find is Android tends to be a little bit buggy. Things crash from time to time, and it does have some glitches. I know some other sites have reported on that as well. It hasn't been terribly buggy, but there are some little things as far as where I'm tapping on different websites. An example would be I'm browsing for tires for my car. I go into the browser, I'm tapping on different things, and some of the menus, such as what size tire it is or what car it's for, they come up, and then I tap on them and it does nothing, or it doesn't register where I tap. And I am tapping right on the area, just it's pretty obvious, like I'd tap here. It seems to be not 100% accurate. Now, I don't know if that's with the Xoom screen or if that's with the Honeycomb OS itself, but I do notice that from time to time it is a pain to use. Now, while using that, I did find that holding the tablet does get very tiresome, and others that I've shown this to say the same thing. While using it for 15 minutes or a half hour straight, holding it like this, typing, holding it again, I noticed that my hand gets very tired, and I don't know if that's the weighting of it, because the tablet isn't very heavy as compared to the iPad. It's about the same. Now, it's a little bit heavier than the iPad 2. It does feel more substantial, and that's maybe due to the way it's constructed, but it really does seem to wear on you, and I don't know if that's because it wants to, seems like it when you're holding it down here, it wants to tip up, and it just may be the way it's weighted. The other thing that is slightly slower is its screen transition from landscape to portrait. While it's not unacceptable, it does take a moment, depending on what application you're in, can be different. One of the other negative things about this Xoom tablet is the 4G. While it's claimed to be 4G capable and does have a SIM card slot here, unfortunately, apparently the hardware is not in there from what reports say, and you would need to go back to Motorola or the manufacturer or Verizon to have the 4G added into the hardware or to get a 4G device. While that's not huge for a lot of people, it may be for those looking for that 4G device and having to go down that extra step and being without it while it gets the hardware placed in it, or getting a whole new tablet and putting all your media back on it altogether. It really depends on what your plans are for it and what you think about it, but that is possibly a downside. One of the other downsides, well, isn't necessarily huge over time, is right now there's not a whole lot of tablet-specific apps. As you can see here, it says featured tablet apps, 48 results, and this is what we have. They do a great job and provide really good use of the full screen of the tablet. I'm afraid that with Android, it may be inconsistent over time, as we've seen with many different devices with different resolutions. Hopefully, Honeycomb takes care of that, but only time will tell. Overall, there isn't a whole lot more I can say that's negative about the tablet other than what I've already mentioned. The Xoom provides a nice experience. It's a different experience from iPad for those that don't want it, but I think anyone that likes Android and knows what they're getting into is really going to enjoy the tablet. However, if you're coming from an iPad, it may be difficult to transition to such a device and get used to things that you probably wouldn't notice unless you had an iPad, as far as the touch in the menus and things that I mentioned earlier. Overall, though, I would definitely recommend the Xoom if you are in the market for a tablet, but the iPad 2 is also something to consider and worth taking a look at. If you have any other questions, though, that you'd like to see within this review that I haven't covered, please feel free to ask, and I'll try and cover those. And there will be more comparisons, such as the camera to the iPad 2 in the future. That will be on Zollotech as well. If you haven't subscribed already, please go ahead and hit subscribe, thumbs up, and like. I always appreciate that. If you've subscribed already, I really appreciate it. Thanks for watching. This is Aaron. I'll see you next time.